Hi, my name's Emery Smith. I'm 46 years old. I was in the United States Air Force for 5.5 years, active duty, and reserve for 2 years and inactive for another 2 years. And in and out of different types of projects as a civilian after that because of my clearance and because of the job I held with them and other corporations that were funded by the government. I joined the military when I was 18 years old. I was in auxiliary of the Air Force when I was 13, and also was in Army ROTC before that. I was in the military for about 5.5 years active duty. I did another 2.5 years of reserve, and then another 2 years of inactive. And that's kind of how I got started with the United States Air Force, and also these compartmentalized projects, moonlighting in the evenings while being active duty and working for these underground labs that were owned by major corporations that were renting and leasing places on the base to do this type of work. And a lot of these were, of course, underground facilities. It was mostly tissue specimen examination and dissecting and taking parts of specimens. And I've done over 3,000 different specimens, not whole bodies, but just different parts of body tissues and whatnot to send for testing. They were testing everything. I wasn't really allowed to, in the early years, know anything about what I was dissecting. All I know is I had to go in there, take this part of this tissue, or dissect this nerve, or take this blood sample from this this specimen, and then send it away for testing. The technology I witnessed in the programs that were suppressive, that were suppressed still to this day, are things like anti-gravity, zero-point energy, a lot of 3D holographic imaging. Of course, there's a lot of devices that were reverse engineered by these corporations from government-retrieved downcraft and extraterrestrial DNA, along with hybrid DNA from these specimens that they use to make pharmaceuticals and to make cures with, and things like that. So there's always a positive and negative. They might make a gun with one thing, but the same device is used to kill cancer, on a different wavelength, but the same technology. So these things are all suppressed. So we don't have to live like we do now. We could actually have a lot of abundance as far as medical technologies, the cures for diseases, the abundance of water and food for everyone, and housing if these technologies were released. And of course, energy, free energy for everyone, and for all of our devices. So we wouldn't have to rely on gas, coal, and oil. I witnessed many different craft in these projects. I was actually working with the bodies and the craft because they're connected. A lot of the craft are organic material consciousness-assisted technology, which means only the driver or that race can actually operate the vehicle due to their frequency of the genetic DNA and the frequency that they're emitting. It's kind of like having a pet or a car that only responds to the owner. And these types of vehicles are so amazing. They're usually made in space through harmonics and frequency. So they can actually give life to a craft and infuse it with artificial intelligence or consciousness, or both, and match it to the driver or the occupants of this vehicle. Some of these craft were many different types of shapes. Of course, there's always the classic spheres, egg shapes, and the disc shapes. But there's also other craft that are interdimensional that can change shape. So they might come in the form of light, and they can manifest and change their atomic structure to become solid. So these types of crafts are a little bit more advanced, than the crafts that we hear about in pop culture, you see on TV and whatnot. These crafts can actually go interdimensional. They can change shape with all the occupants not even knowing it's happening, and then reform again in different worlds and different dimensions and different parts of the universe immediately. So there's not a down lag time, because they have their own atmosphere, they have their own gravity, they have their own little space that they have projected, from this craft that keeps them completely encapsulated with it. And they have already mastered teletransportation and all these things, so the bodies can shrink with the craft in its own living space. And that's why they can go a million miles an hour and make a right-hand turn, because they don't feel it, because they're in their own, kind of like their own dimensional holographic world, where they have to fall under those scientific algorithms, such as like in the 3D here. As soon as they make themselves 3D, they have to survive in a 3D. So they have to maybe take a step down if they're from the 4D, 5D, 6D. So it's really interesting how these craft that we have had for many, many, many years, some have been there for over 30, 40 years, and some craft are very new. And we get different craft all the time. Like I said, one of them that I explained one time looked like an upside down Jello cake. And it actually, you could touch it and it felt like a memory foam mattress and had a hollow inside. This was about 40 feet in diameter, 50 feet in diameter, and it had like a 10 to 25 foot hollow inside to this, craft. And the craft was not hollow, it was solid. But for some reason, inside this opening inside the cylinder, the cylindrical, opening, were where the beings actually were. And it's open, but when it activates, there's a floor appears and it forms. So, but they don't really use floors, they don't use chairs, they're just kind of there. And it's a very interesting, it's a different thing. It's not like about a lot of buttons. There's no steering wheels or cockpit like everyone thinks there is when you walk in these. They're very seamless, and they give off energy all the time, even when they've been captured and taken down for 30 years. They still emit this amazing energy that they're harvesting from within inner space. It's a really, and that's what they're trying to figure out now, is how to harvest that. And a lot of them have, figured this out, but there's a lot of corporations that are, fighting actually for this technology. But we're way advanced, more than you think, a few thousand years than anyone would think, humans here right now. But that's what's being repressed, this type of technology. Our taxes around the world, from the U.S. government, when, they're charging $100 for a hammer, and it only costs them $5 to get. So all this extra money, trillions and trillions of dollars, are going into these black projects to fund them, along with what they're doing in space, as far as working with other humans and extraterrestrials, with trading and whatnot. And I'm not familiar exactly what they're trading, but there is something going on with that. But mostly it comes from here. Extraterrestrials, don't really care about gold or money or cash. So kind of like when you're working in the government and these projects and the military, everything's done by favors, and it is kind of a favor thing, or an even exchange of something for something. Like when I was working with the projects in New Mexico, we stumbled upon something, we couldn't figure it out, whether it was an extraterrestrial device or a craft. So we would call the other bases. We would call over in Australia, we would call, Italy, we would call, England. We would call these places and say, hey, do you have anything like this that you can help us figure out to get to work? Because we come on these, we stumble upon things and we have to stop. And then if we can't figure it out ourselves, we'll start asking around. And for that, we have to give them something they don't know that we have. So it's this exchange and bargaining system of, give me a little information and I'll give you information, Overnight, if we were able to get all these technologies together and give them to the public, it would, end gas, coal, and oil. Because they prove ETs exist. First thing the scientists are going to say, well, how did they get here? They didn't get here in rocket fuel coming from a million light years away. So how did they do it? Well, they're making their own energy. Okay, they're getting the energy from the vacuum of space. It's unlimited energy. It's right here, right now. I can just open it, grab it, and use it with the right technology. That technology being released also affects everything that we do here, such as getting water from the atmosphere, just making it, appearing in your glass, purified water. So things like that, which, we talk about water and food. Well, there's a lot of countries, believe it or not, on the planet that don't have a lot of fresh water and food. Just look at India, okay? All their wells are completely destroyed from lead and arsenic. It's 2.5 billion people over there. It's like a third of the planet, and just in India. So these people, really need some clean water out there, because the ground's completely destroyed. So the technologies that come with this could clean that up. It could clean up the big mess that's in the Pacific Ocean, all that garbage floating around miles and miles and miles. Fukushima, radiation, this type of technology can also clean that up within a couple of days, and transmute all that negative energy and all that trash. Cancers, disease, all that stuff could be, cured in just a couple of days with a couple of treatments using frequency and light from some of these projects. So life would be a lot easier if we didn't have to work so much to pay our gas, coal, and oil bills, and focus our energies in things we'd like to do, and also expand our consciousness. The people that are keeping these technologies from us are referred to as the Cabal, Majestic 12, the 300 major corporations that run the planet. So these are some of the pop culture terms that people use, to define, well, who's actually, making me, pay taxes, and who's making me, pay my electric bill, and this gas keeps going up and down, and the pricing and prices and stuff of all these negative things that we really don't need. I mean, look at us now. We're still Elon Musk and SpaceX and NASA is still using rocket propelled technology that was probably invented by the Chinese on the first bottle rocket firework. So I mean, we're talking hundreds of years of the same thing, just trying to improve it, make it better, when there's already anti-grav there, but they only use it not for the public. They use it behind the scenes for the secret space programs to, advance these secret space programs and keep it from the people of Earth and keep us stunted down here like slaves. I get the question all the time is, how is humanity going to expose these criminals? And the answer for that is very simple. Humanity won't have to. Gaia, planet Earth, will do it for us. Such as what's going on in Antarctica right now. Huge meltdown. Craft everywhere. Craft are starting to stick out of the ice. It keeps warming. They only got a year left before someone's going to see a craft a couple miles long sticking out of the ice. And there's a lot of private satellites out there now. I can order one right now today for under $1 million, just for me, with 4K cameras everywhere. I have these connections, and a lot of other people can get these things. Not that I have one. But what I'm getting at is Gaia is going to be the one. It's not going to be one person. It's going to be a collective of many people from around the world, that whistleblowers and just people of the light, that are going to come forward and share information and put their foot down when things are going to get rough, and keep standing back up after they get hit down, and keep moving forward, because that's the most important thing. And that's how everyone becomes a hero, when people speak out and support people that are speaking out for the world. And once this polar cap melts on both sides a little bit more, and all these civilizations start showing up out of nowhere, the government's going to have to, and the religious community is going to have to answer to these new findings. They're going to have to answer to the stuff that they found underneath the ice in Antarctica. They're going to have to answer to the city that they found under the Giza pyramids. They're going to have to answer to all these amazing things, Atlantis, off the coast of Cuba. And, here it is, these amazing stories, but the media and everything just keeps it hush-hush here. In other countries, it's kind of a little bit easier to talk about these things, and the media kind of now and then reports on it. And then it gets kind of, quieted down. And that's because the media is controlled by the cabal. So once that is severed too, that's going to help humanity feel safer to step forward and to talk, and more whistleblowers will come out. But the government, for the most part, and the military, the U.S. government and U.S. military, are sick of what's going on. 90% of them are just tired of it. And, they have families and they're sick too. And, a lot of these things are happening with a lot of extortion, a lot of, mind control devices are being implemented in, making people do crazy things. So this is bad, because then it makes it feel like our leaders are not competent. So there's a lot of this going on right now to manipulate us as the normal people down here, separated from political and corporations. And we're just like, what is going on? We have the cures, we have the energy systems, we have all this, but it's not being implemented. It's being hidden, suppressed. The issue that we have right now is that people all around the world are still being judgmental. They're not being open-minded enough to say, and some of them can't help it. It's not their fault. Maybe some are getting mind controlled too. But we can't be sitting here, on YouTube, filming, 13-year-olds chopping military soldiers' heads off and celebrating that, because that's a really kind of a low vibe consciousness. So until we learn to grow up, be more mature, and make the right decisions, everyone, including myself, that we have to, at that time, then look at it from a conscious perspective as a civilized, opinion or perspective, and say, okay, we're not being like we were, 10, 20, 30 years ago. We're not fighting anymore. We're not chopping each other's heads off. We're not fighting for gas, coal, and oil, And once people come together, and it might take some horrible natural disaster, as President Ronald Reagan once said, how funny it would be if we were attacked by an outside extraterrestrial threat, that all of our indifferences here on the planet would just fade away because we all have to work together against a common threat. I mean, the president said that. So here we are thinking, well, there might be a natural disaster that wipes out half of the, human beings on the planet, or there might be, Gaia might reach out and have a major earthquake and strike back because we're not treating her very well. We have factions and the cabal that has scalar infotmetry that can create huge hurricanes, earthquakes, tidal waves, and whatnot. So you have all these factors here against us. But long as every one person makes a change, for the better, and we start respecting each other, and we don't judge each other based on, our race or gender and religion, that things are going to get a lot better. But until we learn to get along here, the farthest we're going to get with this is just a ride in SpaceX's little first-class shuttle around the planet. So I wouldn't be thinking there's any moon trips anytime soon to go to the Hilton there on the moon yet. I've had many memorable extraterrestrial experiences, too many to count. And there are a few that did stick out, that stuck out in my memories that stay with me for a long time. And one of them was a visitation from some tall whites in a craft. And it was one of the first times I was actually physically next to these beings and was able to communicate telepathically and get downloaded a lot of information that was needed for me to disembark on this journey, which helped me tremendously. As far as the projects, it was always fascinating every year as you get higher security clearances to also see technologies and extraterrestrials working with humans that were actually was against their will at one time, and then seeing them, becoming a family and being happy that they're helping us because they feel really sad for us. So I think some of the things of working hand in hand with extraterrestrials in these underground laboratories and whatnot, and being part of these projects and seeing that, wow, they're kind of just like us. They're just a little bit more civilized and mature. And it was a really big gift for me because I picked up on a lot with their energy and a lot of their teachings and educational scientific stuff, which I was just fascinated with. And it was very addictive for me to go to work because I just wanted to know more and more. And where's this going? And why doesn't anyone know about this? And, it was later on that I figured, man, if this stuff got out, what a blessing it would be to change the world and, to help all the animals of the world and clean all the oceans and, to cure my family of cancer and all these things was just flying through my head. So I think, to answer that question, it was just working hand in hand with these extraterrestrials. It was a blessing. And also, having special moments where you actually get to communicate with an extraterrestrial now and then to upgrade you and to also learn different sciences that didn't exist here on planet Earth. Because I was working on zero-point energy devices and getting more into that and having zero-point energy devices that actually work, and threats started coming in, and I felt threatened enough that if I did not do something, that my life was going to end very abruptly and very quick. And my past, shows that with the amount of family members and friends I've lost in the last 10 years and lifetime that is correlated with, this type of thing. So I believe that I had to come forward because I needed to get this information out to the people before it's time to go. So I'm saying, yeah, it's time to go. Okay, but before I go, let me get something documented, and let's get, all the paperwork in and everything I could possibly have and give it to people like David Wilcock and Gaia TV and other people that are in this, that are working with me, in this fashion to secure it and to investigate it, and to, if something happens to me today, I'm going to be very happy and satisfied, and to know that, I've done my due diligence and I have, I got this out here. Plus, a lot of my non-disclosure agreements just ended, not all of them, and I felt more comfortable talking about these types of things. And that was probably one of the main reasons that I've been just hanging out in the background, listening to the pop culture leaders here, and also the significantly renowned leaders in this field of consciousness, speak and talk and I can kind of get an idea of what level everyone's at. My life has been threatened significantly ever since I started opening labs that have to do with energy, creating energy from the vacuum of space, and other types of devices. I noticed at that time, and I was a very successful person. I had 21 corporations. I had many patents behind my name. I had unlimited amount of money and funds. And when I started putting my funds and money into these labs, that with these scientists that were developing all these amazing technologies, that's when I noticed they started interfering. And my life just started going downhill from there. And I knew, I caught on, but I thought I was kind of that's not going to happen to me. I'm doing this the right way, And the government told me one time, they brought me in, they said, you got to be careful. They said, you're protected, got your back, but you're not bulletproof. So think about that. So that meant for me, I don't need to be on any camera, and talking about that stuff, about the energy stuff. But after that, I started losing my companies. I had a lot of colleagues turn against me because of my belief systems. A lot of my business partners were very upset that I was doing, CSETI work, or I was, in documentaries talking about new technologies, extraterrestrials. So real quick, my life in that form, just because of who I was, and slowly coming out and coming forward over, many, many years, being an informant for David Wilcock for 10 years, and he wanted me way back then. I was like, no, it's just not time. Plus, people weren't ready for it back then, this type of, I needed everyone to get warmed up to my speed, so I'm glad like Corey Good is out there talking about this stuff. Greer's still talking about it. Wilcock's still talking about it. All these amazing people, that you see at these meetings are talking about, science and the physics behind it and trying to figure it out, and life experiences, which is important. And that laid the foundation for me to come along and say, you guys got it. You're all right. Good. Now let's go. Let's take it to the next level, and let me give you all my information. Hopefully that will, put in those pieces to that puzzle that we all been waiting for, because it's been hidden for way too long. And it is driving me crazy to go outside and sit in a car and start it and go anywhere when I know what's really out there and what I've been involved with, and I've flown in these devices. So it's just What are we doing? Like, why do we have to have underground tunnels with freeways? Or, these other, magnetic, these other train systems and stuff. There's other ways to do it that's easier. We're still staying with the gas is what I'm saying. And for people who have electric cars, I know what you're talking about, because everyone's like, well, I got this car, I got a Tesla, I have an electric hybrid. And I'm like, that's great. I said, where do you plug that into? And where's that energy come from? Most likely it's electric, gas, and coal, unless you're near a hydroelectric plant where you're charging your car. It'd be great if everyone had a waterfall in their backyard. Then we wouldn't need electric, right? Because that waterfall would just basically turn that little turbine over and over and over and over, and we have electricity forever. But not all of us have a waterfall in our backyard. So what I'm getting at is, I just don't understand the whole battery concept, because you still need gas, coal, or oil to charge that battery. However, if you have something like a Bedini system, which one battery charges 50 batteries, well then, hey, that's different, because you could charge, with one Tesla car, you could charge 50 of them. So these are things which make more sense to me, these energetic devices, because any way that you can decrease the use of gas, coal, and oil, which is poisoning the planet, it's poisoning the atmosphere, it's poisoning us and the animals of the planet and the oceans, then, it'll clear up. It's going to clear up real quick, this atmosphere, once we stop that. And then there was Cirrus, the documentary, which pretty much everyone in that documentary, as far as the core team members, were, heavily attacked, severely attacked at some point. Even our director, Armadeep Kalika's father, was killed. And I know it's all speculation of, why and who, but we had a very deep conversation with him before he took this contract job, and said, this is a very sensitive thing. So many changes will happen to you, and some might not be good. And sure enough, they blamed it on some white supremacist faction, but I can assure you it wasn't. It was a direct attack on his family so he would leave the Cirrus movie, which he didn't. So thank goodness for that, because we wouldn't have a movie by then. So working in CSETI too, it started getting, and the movie, Cirrus the documentary, they were definitely coming at us hard. I mean, I was actually jumped by 2 agents in my hotel room, was severely beaten and hospitalized, and there's, I was actually on the phone with someone that was warning me at that exact moment, there's a attack imminent on you, and a couple of the people in the higher echelon of CSETI and with this movie. And I was, like, oh, okay. Next thing you know, before I even put the phone down, I hear this ringing in my ear, and it was so excruciating. I just remember putting my head down, dropping the phone, and I look up, and what I see after this excruciating sound in my head is 2 agents, 2 guys in suits, and they literally were beating the heck out of me, and I could not do anything. It was so bad I was hospitalized. And then I knew at that point, wow, this is getting a little rough. And then I had many assassination attempts attacked on me, shot at, on the highway, and just intimidation factors. If they really wanted me dead, they would have already killed me. But, in order to kill me, they have to get many signatures, I'll say, on that paper to have it done. Because if they killed the wrong person and they didn't use that person yet for the right thing, because there's, like I said, there's a good part. There's a lot of white hats in there that, are trying to protect us. So when you're a scientist and you're targeted for these types of things, what they do is they just go down and to the rough side of the city that you live in and try to hire like a drug addict user for $1,000 to go wipe you out. If that doesn't work and they fail, then they look at the gangs in that area, which are very successful at taking people out or robbing you or making you get in a car accident. And if that doesn't work, then they'll find a hitman in that state that's really good. And if that doesn't work, then they call in the black ops guys that are for that corporation, private ops, that work for private organizations, to come really, make sure that the job's done. Now, if they can't make it look like a suicide or an assassination, then what they'll do is they'll get you in a really nice car accident. And that usually does the job, with also hitting you with electromagnetic pulse weapons to rupture your aorta and your brain and break bones, which they can do from a satellite. And they would just blame it on a car accident, So even though it was a small car accident, like recently, when I was transporting this device from the lab to another part here in California, and we had a guy come across, right across the line. We're in Topanga Canyon. That road is very, very dangerous to begin with. And here is a person coming at me, crossing the line, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, oh, he just came around the turn too fast. He's going to just correct that, autocorrect that. And I'm like, no, he's not. I had enough time in my head to like 3 seconds. And I have a big wall here, rock wall. I can't go anywhere, maybe 3 feet. And then I saw him get directly in my lane and actually accelerate. And then I knew that this was going to hurt. So I just turned a little bit and hit my front corner panel. It was very, very traumatic. It was a tragedy. And maybe he didn't know why he did it. He seemed like he didn't know why he did it. And, they can take over someone and just for a little bit to have them texting on the phone, not paying attention, or maybe have them apply, to the gas pedal a little bit. It's these little things that people think, oh, well, they would just come and take you out. No, they got to make it look natural. The assassination and killing has to be natural or look natural, because they don't want, anyone to say that this was a hit or anything like that. So car accidents are a great way, for that to happen. Luckily, I was being protected and had a great car that was very strong at the time. And it protected me and saved me. So I'm very blessed for that. Had a concussion and some lacerations, and just was very sore for a couple of months, but couldn't really do much. But I bounced back, and everything was fine. Another way that they do is they'll try to make you sick, unhealthy. So you really have to be always healthy. You can't be messing around putting really bad chemicals in your body, because that gives them an opportunity to take advantage of you. You lower your field by putting bad things in your body, then they can just walk in and make you go do something really stupid, lay on some train tracks, and you'll just get run over. So you have to be, really aware. And I got to the point where it was just too much. I had 3 different people following me, surveillancing me, 3 different organizations, and it was just getting old, all because of, they didn't want me to come out about Big Pharma. They didn't want me to come out about extraterrestrials. They didn't want me to come out about technology, because a lot of people out there that are coming forward, there's not too much background to them. Me, I'm well established, have all my government papers, all my military papers. Everyone knows I'm credentialed to the max, overqualified for a lot of these facilities, which I recently, a few years ago, was going back and forth, reapplying to see, what was going on with that. So, I think me coming forward is going to bring a lot of really wonderfully educated, very well respected doctors and military personnel out. And that's another reason I came forward, is to initiate that and to show people, hey, it's not as bad as it seems, but it's all the way you look at it and how far you want to go with it. And a lot of the people that I know are already in their 70s and 80s, the people I worked with and worked under, and they're coming forward. So, this is a new thing. I mean, it's set on film yet. So we have multiple whistleblowers now that I've worked with that do want to come forward now since I came forward. And they, are making special arrangements right now for their life and for their family, because that's how serious it is. They're actually preparing certain ways they're going to live and, how they're going to protect themselves just in case someone doesn't approve of them coming out. But the thing is, they're having the integrity and the love to come forward like I have, and just give it to the people. And I thought the people weren't really going to be ready, for this. But since they've been prepped, all the way up into this with all these fascinating speakers, like Wilcock and Good, that they're ready. And I can't believe, when I look at my Facebook, all the responses and all the questions are so intelligent. It's fantastic to know that people are really doing their due diligence and listening to what I say and researching it and finding out, wow, there's definitely something to this, and it's going to get better because I have a plethora of information. As long as I'm breathing, I can, keep sharing with everyone. And that's what I'm going to do.